I'm Adam and I'm talking to Matt Good. How's it going?
Pretty good, how are you?
Good, thanks. Last time we talked to you was for the premiere of Lights of Endangered Species. Mm-hmm. That album came out 5 months ago.
Yep.
How's the response been from fans?
Well, I think from longtime fans, it's been pretty good because, they tend to follow your, your kind of indulgences throughout your career. I don't know that, fair weather fans have accepted it really as much as maybe past work, because it's not really, it's not really as easily digestible, I think, as some of the stuff I've done in the past. If some of the stuff I've done in the past is easily digestible, but it's been a struggle. I mean, when I delivered the record to Universal, I said that I don't really know what you guys are going to do with this, and it was something I had to be prepared for, career-wise, as far as that kind of thing. But it was something artistically that had to be done at this point, so I did it.
Well, things have changed a ton, obviously, in the music industry since first Matthew Good album came out in '95, I believe. How is it different for you in terms of pressures you feel, I'll say, in terms of what kind of music you're expected to create?
Well, I mean, I don't really take a lot of that into consideration. I think probably the one thing I've noticed most of all is the declination especially with the current economy, over the last few years of live shows. Everyone out there's kind of suffering a little bit. As far as you go into a city and say you usually play a 3,000 seat venue and then that's busted down to like a 1,500 seat venue kind of thing.
It was interesting because most people name music piracy before talking about people going to
Well, I don't,
shows.
record sales, I mean, at this point, I don't even see why anyone's talking about it being an issue. Who makes money off record sales anyway, unless you're selling 5 million records? No one. Unless you own it, unless you own the masters, right?
Right, I was going to say, I mean...
So I mean, you've got to pay your label back. I mean, with the money that they've... at this point in my career, I take very little money from my label, precisely for the purpose that hopefully I'll make some back. But in this country, I mean, they dropped the gold and platinum standards even to try to make up the difference. So It's like, I make all my money on the road, right? So it really is, it's about performing, and it's, and it's about people coming out to shows and that kind of thing. I think the disparity that I find at this point in my career, 18 years in, is that, you have, on this tour especially, I've found that people have only found out I've been playing like 5 days away from shows. Whereas, like when I went out on Avalanche, the whole tour was sold out. The day I stepped out my front door of my home, I was going out on a completely sold out tour, and it's kind of interesting. You do the same amount of press and all the rest of it, but it's kind of it's grown into a bit of a challenge, and so that's something you have to deal with.
What do you think that's a result of? Is it something to do with the media, or is it something to do with with the economy?
I think it has to do with the economy. I think people have to, concerts aren't cheap anymore. I mean, mine aren't overly expensive compared to most acts you'd go to see, but, I mean, if you're going to go to an arena like the Rogers Center or something and see a band, I mean, you're going to pay like a minimum of what, $75, $85 for like a normal seat maybe?
Yeah, plus service charges.
Plus service charges, and that's just for a normal seat. I mean, to get on the floor or whatever, you're talking about more money. And for your, average person on an average paycheck, that's a lot of money.
Well, they've done polls, and people go to an average of, I think it's one concert a year nowadays, and they probably only hear about the really big, really expensive shows. So for me, it's just like, I'm kind of, I'd say, kind of like on par really with the kind of Wilco, kind of established in this country kind of thing. So, so it's, not too big, but not too small kind of thing. Right. And, so it can pose challenges, and, you try to deal with them the best you can, but. You do a lot of writing and you interact with your fans a lot.
Yeah.
Is that something you feel an artist has to do, or is it just something you feel you have to do?
To be honest with you, it's interesting that you brought up that question. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and that, I've been active, as you probably know, I've been active on the internet since 1997, pretty much.
Since slightly before the internet was invented, I think.
And
I think that one of the things I've been thinking about lately is I think that it's actually swung to the other side. I think everyone can go on Twitter and Facebook and find out everything they want to know. And it's almost come to the point where maybe being on Twitter and Facebook isn't a good thing. Maybe people not having that access will make them more curious. I'm not sure yet. I'm deliberating that, or will they just be so lazy that they won't care?
You mean building up a mystery about an artist?
Well, no, just kind of like, you know what, if you want to actually know, go to the website. You know how many people go on my Facebook fan page and like ask questions that they could easily find the information if they just went to the shows page on my website?
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like ridiculous. It's like, so wonder, you know, go to the shows page.
And do you ever feel as an artist like, why am I spending my time answering, you know, FAQ sort of stuff? When,
Yeah.
You know, you create music and put on shows.
Yeah.
For a living.
You know, that is what I do, and you know, and I'm very open and very connected with fans and that kind of thing. But I've also found that over the last like couple of years, it's become a bit too comfortable for fans. You know, you'll get into situations in live performances, because I play a lot of theaters, where people will just start yelling random stuff in between songs, and it's not like the normal random stuff. It's kind of they have a sense of extreme familiarity with you, even though that doesn't exist, and it's kind of off-putting sometimes. I don't know.
Saw you at Massey Hall a few years ago,
Yeah.
and there were some stupid shit. Sometimes one person shining one of those laser pointers at you.
Yeah.
You spent more time bitching that person out than they were actually shining it on you. And I remember thinking, like, this is real interactive concert theater. Like, if you can do something that the singer's going to notice, you should be called out for it. Really.
Well, for sure.
So.
You know, I mean, I don't, you know, I don't know. It's kind of like you could sit here and talk about it, but I don't have the energy, so.
I guess there's no real answer.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, speaking of Twitter, this is a perfect segue. This morning I tweeted, very excited to be interviewing Matt Good this afternoon. Tweet me any questions and I will do my best to ask them. I should be more careful about things, I promise, because here's the first response I got. Ask him what it's like to be the saddest person in rock. I thought, I don't know if I go so far to say that. So consider that in quotes, really. I mean,
The saddest person? What the hell is that supposed to mean?
Well, I mean, you know, the first word I would use to describe your music is passionate, or emotional is probably up there too.
You could put melancholy in there. I suffer from bipolarity, sure.
You
know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, does that sort of image thing? That's
I don't
sort
give a damn. People can say what they want. I'm not an unhappy person at all. I have a beautiful wife. I have beautiful children. You know?
And you're funny too. I mean, having seen you in concert, it's refreshing. Kind of going from very intense songs to, you know, you doing.
Well, that's why I like to tour acoustically a lot. Because it just turns into just stand-up comedy with some acoustic songs.
Yeah, storytelling. Yeah.
I know. People have. I mean, you know, I think as far as Canadian musicians that have survived as long as I have, from the generation of musicians that I'm from, I probably have easily the most misconceptions about me.
What do you think that is?
I have no clue.
You're one of the most direct, straight-talking interviewees
Well,
I've ever
I
seen
think that we can
before.
obviously chalk that up to people don't like straight and direct.
Maybe.
You know, it's easy to draw conclusions with straight and direct, isn't it?
Oh, like what's he hiding? You explained that
exactly.
too clearly.
You know, that kind of thing. I mean, we live in a day and age where, you know, musicians are supposed to be just happy to be alive and, you know, ingratiate themselves on everybody. And, you know, creative people have never been like that. But, you know, throughout history, they've just never been like that. They've, you know, for most of it, they've been very moody people. And, you know, I used to love that about the bands that I followed when I was a kid, you know, like, will Paul Westerberg fall down on stage tonight kind of thing, you know? Sure. I mean, that was part of it all. And it was just, and now it's just this shiny, polished exterior that has to exist. And that's not human.
It's almost cookie-cutter personalities to with cookie-cutter music, really, in a way. I mean, not everybody, obviously.
Yeah, but it's not human. There's nothing real about it. And I don't understand how people want something unreal to something that is so real. Because music is so real, right? I mean, it is easily the most impacting thing in the world artistically. I mean, you can go and see film, yes, but you don't have to imagine the film, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? Well,
I know exactly.
You know what I'm saying? But with music, something is impacting you that then you have to mentally translate. Right. And that can be translated as different as every person on this planet is, that's how different it's translated. And nothing else exists like that.
You have to relate to music, and who can relate to someone perfect, really?
No, you can't.
Or the idea.
But
of
that's
a
the
perfect
point.
person,
You're not supposed
right?
to. The point is you're supposed to take it and process it yourself and have it be relatable to you. It becomes yours, right? It becomes your own, and that's the gift of it. That's the gift of it. It's who cares what I meant? What does it mean to you? What does it do to you? How does it fit into the piece of the puzzle of your life and what's happening in your life?
And I've heard you say you always purposely make sure your lyrics are vague enough that they can apply to anybody.
Well,
right?
in certain instances, that's been true. I think in the past on some records they've been pretty poignant and pretty blatant. But I mean, yeah, I don't think I sit down and do that on purpose. You know, I mean, I probably said that at the time because I was trying to be God knows what. But you know, the reality is that I kind of do what I do. But I've always believed that about music. I've always believed that. You know. And that applies to not only music with lyrics, but everything from symphony to explosions in the sky, which have no lyrics, you know? It's the same thing. It impacts us and it paints pictures in our heads.
Like you said, it's about the translation.
Yeah, it is about the translation. I mean, you as, given that you can't see, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how that must just, you know, the heightened awareness, like in your head, when something impacts you on an emotional level. You know, well, that's probably a really good explanation, even though I can see and most people can see. But
that's an excellent explanation. I mean, it would take me probably longer than this interview to really explain kind of my experience versus a sighted person necessarily. But I mean, the fact that you and I probably could experience not something similar because we're two different people, but it would be a similar process for both of us.
Exactly.
To listen to music.
You know, you have probably a far more intrinsic relationship with that process than other people. But what I'm saying is that would just be an amplified explanation of what I'm talking about.
It makes perfect sense. All right, let's talk about some specifics. For your past 3 albums, starting with Hospital Music, at least 2 songs per album have been a bit, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say a bit weirder, a bit less conventional in certain ways. You know, anything from samples to atypical song structures to a lot of horns. Mm-hmm. Has that been just you following your muse at the time, or were you always waiting to do stuff like that? Waiting for the right time?
I've been waiting to do stuff like that. To be quite honest with you, if I had kind of the money and the ability to keep a 60-piece orchestra around, you know, like Brian Wilson, I'd probably come up with some pretty bizarre out there stuff. But you know. There are constraints to what I can do, and you know, I'd love to go completely off the deep end and release a 4-disc album. Sure, who wouldn't? In a perfect world, but
you're not the Flaming Lips, though. So
yeah, well, I don't even know how the Flaming Lips get away with it.
I have no idea. They put stuff in gummy skulls. That's how they sell their albums.
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
I don't know if you heard about that. So just something to think about.
Sure,
I guess. Yeah.
Exactly.
Speaking of orchestras, how are you doing the stuff from Lights of Endangered Species Live? I mean, songs like Zero Orchestra, where it just
we kind of basically get around it with guitars and that sort of thing, and I have a keyboard player, so yeah.
Okay, so it's parts keeping the same melody, same elements, really.
Oh yeah. No.
Okay, and speaking of experimental, non-populous, that's. How long is the album version of that song? 8 minutes?
It's just 9 minutes, yeah.
Oh, 9 minutes. Did you write that all at once, or did you add parts to it?
No, I wrote it kind of all going. That song very much is representative of classical movements.
Okay.
You know, so it has more classical song structure to it. But yeah, I wrote it all kind of on one period working on it. So
the guitar in that song and Shallows Low especially, I find the guitar really interesting. It strikes me as it's almost like it picks up from the vocals, or is doing the same thing as the vocals without sticking to the vocal line. Is that how you wrote it? Am I?
Yeah, I mean, when I wrote all those solos, it's like, I played them at home when I demoed them. I'm just I find it very interesting how Pink Floyd has very much cultivated that, in a lot of their albums, and Gilmour and Waters are geniuses for that. And it's kind of like a fluid dance that just takes off where the vocal left off. And I kind of very much have always been influenced by that, but then combining that kind of dirty Neil Young, out of control aspect to it at the same time. So yeah, I kind of, you know, those kind of two things influence me a lot.
Yeah, it's beautiful because it's consistent, but it's not lacking. It's
Yeah,
still
yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah.
Right. There are singles from this album. I think there's been 2 so far. Do you feel nowadays like you have to, or do you care if something reaches the status of, you know, you've had a handful of massive singles in the past, you know, all over radio and Much Music when Much Music was a different sort of entity.
Yeah.
Or something like, I think Load Me Up was the last one I remember being just everywhere.
Yeah.
Really.
No, though after Load Me Up, X-Rated was everywhere, and Weapon, same thing. Yeah.
Oh, Weapon, right, I forgot.
Yeah,
So,
so-
and Born Losers too, I think.
Yeah, there was no video for Born Losers, but
Right.
yeah.
You don't make videos anymore, do you?
No, too expensive.
Is that it? It's just a matter of expensive?
Yeah. I'm not going to bother trying to translate something that I know that's going to cost me X amount of dollars and waste that money. So.
Okay. Was it ever a matter of, well, when you did make videos, were you ever worried about showing an interpretation of something, so to speak, as opposed to just letting people hear it and envision it for themselves?
I don't know. Back then, you just kind of like, that's one of the things you did, right? Videos were, you know, videos were what you did. So we kind of came up with what we could come up with at the time and ran with it. So.
Okay, fair enough. Last question. I want to know who's out there that's got your ear now? Any bands you can recommend or songs? Anything?
Oh, who have I been listening to a lot lately? The Bell Brigade.
Okay, yeah.
They're fantastic, I think. Obviously, the new Explosions record. Quite fond of that. Quite fond of pretty much everything they do. One of my favorite bands.
They've gotten pretty happy sounding with their latest album. Oh, that's
Yeah.
my take.
Well, sure, but that's fine, you know. Who else, really? I don't know, really. Besides, I don't listen to a lot of new music. I listen to a lot of jazz, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, you can definitely hear that on
Yeah.
Lights. So.
A lot of, you know, a lot of Thelonious Monk and, you know, Mingus and, you know,
Sure.
kind of middle era Miles Davis and like Bitches Brew and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's impressive actually that you didn't create a jazz fusion album. Like
Well,
there's
I
jazz.
could, but
no, and it would be cool if you did. But
where would that go?
it's just interesting because it's jazz.
4
elements in
people that
rock.
would show up at shows and be going, all right, lay that down. Because what are you supposed to go between that and Time Bomb? Like, it just doesn't segue.
Yeah, fair enough. Actually, I always wondered, how do you put a set list together nowadays?
Very difficultly. Given, you know, just given how the type of songs that are on the new record compared to the old material.
For
I
sure.
try to put about 2 or 3 of those in, but I tend to play at shows like 6 or 7 songs off the new album. So
Okay.
with difficulty. Yeah.
Are you thinking of, do you have any particular type of fan in mind when you're putting a set list together,
No.
or just whatever works?
I have myself in mind and the show in mind.
Fair
what I
enough.
want to translate in mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Matt, thanks so much for coming
Thanks
by.
for having me.